Today we got to talk about this letter from the Costco CEO and what workers want in the workplace. So let's get started. This article is from Wavy. It's a local news agency. It says Norfolk Costco workers vote overwhelmingly to unionize, and they joined the Teamsters. This is a warehouse, right? And they joined it. And it says this was a big move for the workers. Said Nick Jones, an organizer for Teamsters Local 822. Traditionally, Costco has been looked upon as a fair and decent employer, but I guess over time with corporate interests, some of the things were going right in this store. And there's nothing for me clear about how it was overwhelming. It just says overwhelmingly, but there's no what the actual specific numbers are. It seems like they're, citing the Teamsters for it because a little bit later on, the CEO says that it was fairly narrow. CEO Craig Jelinek says that it was in a close vote. So I don't know. There's two different perspectives on this vote, whatever it was. But ultimately they voted and ratified the national agreement, and so they're planning on bargaining with Costco. As I referenced earlier, the Costco CEO, Craig Jelinek, wrote a letter to all U.S. employees subsequent to the union activity and vote at the Norfolk site and said, to be honest, we're disappointed by the result in Norfolk. We're not disappointed in our employees. We're disappointed in ourselves as managers and leaders. The fact that a majority of Norfolk employees felt that they wanted or needed a union constitutes a failure on our part. And that's absolutely true, especially in the modern era. There is a situation, now we don't have as dangerous work. We don't have, situations that are, nearly like they were 100 years ago when unionization was really at its peak. But anytime that a company results or that a company has a union vote, it's, more and more looking like it's a failure on the management and leadership to appropriately provide for people in the store. Now, I will note that there is a political piece to unionization that it seems to have popped up more recently. People are unionizing because of specific beliefs they have and things of that nature, rather than specific situations that are happening in a location, and that's less controllable on the part of the managers and staff. But ultimately, unionization can be viewed as a failure by the management as a whole. So I wanted to talk about those failures. And we're going to go to a Cornell article called "What Workers Want." This was a scholarly paper released by Richard B. Freeman and Joel Rogers in January of 2006. Excerpts of it are available in the link down below if you want to take a look at it. But it is something that I'm sure is available if you have access to journals, scholarly journals. Here, I want to talk about some of the things they found in this study in August of 2005 that was, for me, quite interesting. So, they ranked workers ranked what workers thought was a right and very essential or very important. And the top five are actually pretty curious. Number one, which I was kind of surprised about, was equal racial and ethnic treatment. I mean, it makes sense as something very important, but I expected a living wage to, come ahead of it. I think, but equal racial and ethnic treatment was number one. It was number two. Number one was safe and healthy workplace. Number three was freedom from sexual harassment. Of course, makes sense. And number four was equal pay for women. And then five was respect from one's employer, as you can see here. So then, beyond that, where were the gaps? Well, the big gap ratio was with a living wage, right? So the share of workers was 87, thinking it was very important, and 47 was actually arriving at it, and so that gap was quite huge. And I imagine that gap has even gotten bigger since this study was done back in 2005. And then number two, the gap was equal pay for women. Number three was equal treatment regardless of age. Number four was respect from one's employer. And number five was a safe and healthy workforce. And I think that one is really interesting. It had the lowest gap of many, but I think that the pandemic and everything that came with it really exposed this, and probably made people feel like there's a much bigger gap than what you're seeing highlighted here in 2005. And so I get the impression that, especially since the pandemic, or the living wage with the huge gap of 40 between workers thinking the right is essential and whether or not they're doing well on it, and uh, I imagine the increase in gap for a safe and healthy workplace has truly, created a ridge between employers and employees, and you're seeing it here. Um, I think that I think that the perceptions with respect to equal treatment and freedom from harassment and equal pay have also declined over the time frame. And as a result, you can see what people think are important, and what people
What do
actually
you think
get.
about today's
So let me
video?
know what
Please
you think in the
comment
comments
down
down below. What's
below.
important to you, and
Like,
what are you
share,
not
and
getting now?
subscribe. It really
Leave a
helps
comment,
out.
like,
And I'll
share,
see you on the next
subscribe,
one.
and we'll see you on the
Bye,
next video. Bye, guys.
guys.